justice. We haven't quite caught up with the march just yet. That's going to be starting over at the British Museum. Right now we're in front of Barclays over here, where we can see that there's a protest happening from Camden Palestine Solidarity Campaign. So you might have seen Barclays a lot in the focus in the past in XR actions, because they are the largest European funder for fossil fuels. So they fund these various different fossil fuel projects and bankroll them. But they're also heavily involved in the arms trade, and they fund companies such as Elbit Systems, which they have recently divested from after a long direct action campaign. But what we'll be seeing a lot today is that there are very similar targets across the social justice sphere and the climate justice sphere. And you cannot have climate justice without human rights. And human rights is essentially interlinked with climate justice, which is why this march today is going to be focusing on the global need for climate justice. And there will be a lot of solidarity with what is happening in Palestine and across the world, wars and conflicts. Sudan, DRC, we'll be covering all of these topics today. The stream today will be happening in two parts. We're going to be here on YouTube and on Facebook, and we're going to be covering the beginning of the march, which we'll be walking over to shortly. We're then going to take a little bit of a break as we march down to Downing Street, and then we'll be back with you on Instagram later on this afternoon, and we'll be covering the second half of the march on Instagram and the speeches happening in front of Downing Street. So with me today, I have Coco, who will be co-presenting today with me. And we are now going to start heading over to where the march is going to begin. And Coco will tell us a little bit more about climate justice. They have been involved in the climate justice movement since you were a teenager, for a long time. So I'm going to hand over to you, and we're going to start walking over to the march.
Thank you. So I love that word solidarity, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that today. Solidarity and intersectionality, because we're seeing people from across the environmental space today, as well as human rights organisations like Amnesty International UK. And it's going to be really great to see this giant coalition. There's over 60 organisations that are part of today, because we all see this as vital. And with power, the power to the people, we need to remind ourselves that we can't leave this up to government leaders at COP right now. We have to be on the streets demanding that our government take action on the climate crisis, on human rights crises that are happening across the globe right now. So I'm really looking forward to joining the march right now and seeing just how many people are on the streets of London today. So as a little bit of a backdrop, right now, COP29 is taking place in Baku, Azerbaijan, and as Greta Thunberg recently pointed out in an article in The Guardian, this is the second year in a row that the COP is taking place in a petro-state, and it just goes to show that the COP has been a greenwashing campaign recently, in recent years, for governments and fossil fuel advocates to be at the COP, taking up space, when in reality it should be indigenous people at the forefront of these climate discussions. And now I can start hearing the chants. I see a lot of flags and banners, so let's see how this march looks. So as you can see, this is the Youth Demands block right now.
So we're currently here at Tottenham Court Road. There's a roadblock happening with demand, and we haven't even reached the beginning of the march yet. We'll be moving on to the beginning of the march at the moment, but as we can see, without even having reached the march, there's various different actions happening around London at the moment. So we'll start continuing on to the march, and we'll be catching up with Youth Demand most likely later on in the day, and hear a little bit more directly from them about what is Youth Demand in the day, and hear a little bit more directly from them about what is Youth Demand, what are their demands, and how are they both working on climate justice stuff while also putting the social justice stuff at the forefront of their demands. So we're going to now continue on to the start of the march, which is going to be starting right off in front of the British Museum, a very fitting place to be starting a march. As many of you online, I'm sure, are aware, the British Museum has had a bad history when it comes to colonialism and the artifacts that are in the British Museum. And there's been an extreme reluctance to reckon with that past and to give artifacts back, to talk about reparations. We'll be interviewing people along the march today, and we'll hopefully be able to find people who can talk directly to these various different points as we catch up to the march. Coco's caught up with me again. I think some of our other camera people are still over capturing footage from the Youth Demand blockade, which was at Tottenham Court Road here. The junction, I'm not a Londoner, so I don't know the exact name of the junction, but near Tottenham Court Underground Station, which is just a stone throw away from the British Museum.
So yeah, as you mentioned, it's quite loud in the background, so I only caught bits and pieces. But there is a huge reckoning right now with the effects of colonialism on a global stage, and just what that has meant for climate change. The UK is one of the early industrialized nations of the world, and so we've historically put more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And even though we're in some ways least affected by the climate crisis right now, we've done the most to contribute. And what we're seeing is increasingly in the global south, countries which have done the least to contribute to the climate crisis are suffering now. They're suffering really badly. And we really need to be taking responsibility of mitigating climate change. And that is what's so exciting right now about seeing how all of these issues are connected. How we have a climate crisis, we have different responsibilities to take.
So for those who are only going to be joining the march a little bit later on because they maybe overslept a little bit today but are in London, the march today is going to be starting, like I said earlier, at the British Museum, and then we're going to be walking south through Covent Garden down to Downing Street, and the march will be ending today at Downing Street. And we'll have a couple of different speeches there. There are over 60 organisations involved in today's march, a large coalition that I believe started in the UK a few years ago, actually, during while COP was happening in Glasgow. Coco, you were looking earlier today at the list of the various different organisations that were part of this coalition. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so as my co-presenter is saying, there are over 60 organisations that are part of this climate justice coalition here today. We've got Palestine Solidarity Campaign, we've got Amnesty International UK, obviously Extinction Rebellion, Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, Fossil Free London, so many others. And these are really groups from across the environmental sphere as well as human rights organisations as well. And we've got women's rights, children's rights organisations that are here today. And I think what we're all banding together to say is that the government needs to come together to protect life. And that means the life on this planet as well as the life of people who are experiencing conflict all across the world right now.
No roadblocks here, so we have to wait at the traffic light like good citizens waiting to get across. You can already see that we started to walk a little bit along the march. There's areas already being cordoned off. Police getting ready for the march to be walking through here later on today. Joining us now, the plan for today is that we're going to be streaming the March for Global Climate Justice to Facebook and YouTube simultaneously in the morning. or I guess now it's already afternoon. We'll be covering the first half of the march, meeting up with various different organizations and spokespeople and getting interviews and bringing the entire march live to you on YouTube and Facebook. And then we're going to take a little bit of a break, maybe around 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to reconvene. Let's go around this way, and then we're going to reconvene later on towards the second half of the march on Instagram. So do catch up with us later on Instagram, where we'll then be capturing the end of the march and the various different speeches that are happening there. So we hope by going out to different platforms, giving a little bit of diversity of the stream, trying out some different stuff, we'll keep evolving how we do these live streams and how we bring the march to those of you who aren't able to make it today for London for various different reasons, for people who do not have the ability or don't have the ability, either financial or otherwise, to come up to London, so you can still be involved in the movement and see what's happening. Do let us know in the comment sections on all of these platforms your feedback about this, how we're bringing the march to you. Oh, now we're really seeing the march over here. Fantastic. Do let us know in the comment section if you have any feedbacks, any suggestions that you would like to do. Most of the time we do these live streams with British Sign Language interpreters. We weren't able to organise that for today, sadly, but this is something we usually try to do. Any other sort of suggestions like that, pop them in the comment section below or above, wherever it is on Facebook and YouTube, it's below. Okay, we can already see lots of different banners here. I see a couple of XR banners. I, of course, see many Palestinian flags as well. Banners reading global climate justice. See some Amnesty International, various different organizations here. Local XR groups. Christian Climate Action has come out today. Fantastic diversity of people. Many familiar people that we've seen recently during the Ensure Our Survival campaign and the March for Clean Water on the XR live stream, but also many, many other people that we're seeing today. Do also let us know in the comments section if you have any particular questions or talking points that you would like us to talk about today. So we're going to go and we're going to try to find some interviews and line up some interviews for people. While I go and I'm going to find some people to interview, I'll hand the mic back over to Coco.
Okay, I see Fossil Free London over here as well. So, like we said, we are, as world leaders are gathering in Azerbaijan right now for COP29. We are in the streets of London to demand three main things: that the UK government ends our reliance on fossil fuels, that it pays up for climate finance, and that it ends its complicity in Israel's assault on Gaza. And what our message here today is: the climate crisis and the genocide in Gaza are inextricably linked, and we must put an end to both, because we can't achieve climate justice without achieving human rights worldwide. And that is really the message here today. So as you can see behind me, there's quite a lot of XR people you can see in the background. Let's see what else. I just saw a poster from War on Want that says no climate justice without human rights. That's going to be, I think, a very popular message here today. Here, this one says you can't pinkwash colonialism. And that goes to show there's a lot of feminist groups and feminists here today drawing the link between women's rights and climate justice. And I can also see a placard that says, "What love requires of us is climate action now." Yes, so this is the beginning of the live stream, as we've said, and I found a lovely person here to interview. But can you tell me a bit why you're here today, why this is so important, and your perspective on why we need climate justice now?
I've been a climate justice campaigner for over 30 years, and we're just not doing anything about the damage that's happening to people in all over the world and to our climate. We could have done so much, but it's not too late. And I'm passionate about this, and I brought my little grandson with me, who was 3 a few days ago, because I want the world to be a better place for him. I don't want him to have to still be campaigning when he's an adult. So I'm doing my bit.
I love what you said about it's not too late. I think we see a lot of climate doomism in the world of people saying it's too late and we just sit back and let it happen. But I think that's a very defeatist attitude, and we can't, for the younger generations here today, it's really important that people like you are standing up for them and saying it's not too late. We have to do everything we can right now so that we can give them the best chance of a livable future.
Yeah, and we're Christians as well. And we believe that, we need justice for people now who are suffering because of what we're doing to the planet. That's not right. And it's part of our faith to speak out about that and to do something about it, as well as protecting the world for the next generation and the ones to come.
And that sort of draws to the point as well that with all these human rights organizations, there are also a lot of faith-based groups like Christian Climate Action, which I heard today. And it's really amazing to see that people's faith can motivate them as well to take action on climate and for all the other people that we share this planet with. So thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Another interview lined up here if you want.
So speaking of faith-based groups, here is another person with Christian Climate Action. And I wanted to ask you, what is your motivation for being here today? Why do you think that climate action and climate justice is so important?
It affects everyone on the planet. And right now, there are parts of the world that are suffering terribly. We've got this sign here that says climate inaction. For the damage we've done by our persistent use of fossil fuel, fund this properly. We've had just words and a little trickle of money, but it has to be substantiated. We're calling out for COP29 to really boost this whole thing of payments from where it's due.
I really like that mention of our historical responsibility to really mitigate climate and also pay up for climate finance. And that's one of the demands of this march, is that the UK government does its part to promote climate finance, because we do have a responsibility. And like we've mentioned before, the global south is experiencing the worst effects of climate change, even though they've done the least to contribute actually to these emissions.
Absolutely, yes. I agree.
Thank you so much. Here we have a placard that says people over profit, peace over profit, and planet over profit. And that's a really good message here today as well. So I would like to also draw attention to another co-presenter today.
Oh yeah. Yeah, hi, I'm the co-presenter today. My name is Shanna. And we are here outside the British Museum, which is sponsored by BP currently. I don't know what the exact stat is. I think it's like 15 billion or something, or 5 billion in sponsorship money basically to the museum, or maybe there's a million. But as a lot of people here are aware, and the reason why we're outside the British Museum in particular, who is sponsored by BP, is sponsored by BP. It doesn't just give money to the museum so they can continue to do their cultural important work. It gives a social license to BP by doing so. It endears the public to the brand of BP. it just creates a more positive image of it, and like basically makes BP and other oil fossil fuel companies who do sponsorships basically makes them name brands. And then once things are name brands, or the public has a positive connotation of these like companies, these fossil fuel companies, it really benefits them. People are more likely to take jobs with BP if they're familiar with them. They see them sponsoring a cultural institution like the British Museum. It really just gives them social stock to continue their operations. It makes it seem that these are legitimate companies doing legitimate things, and it's all nice and dandy. It's like you wouldn't expect a cultural institution like the British Museum to be sponsored by a tobacco company or like a gambling company. That would be seen as a bit gauche, right? But for some reason it's okay for fossil fuel companies, and that's the reason why a lot of people try to put pressure for them to drop fossil fuel companies, to say, actually, what these companies do is not acceptable anymore, hence you should not be accepting their money and putting their shiny logo onto the museum. I could also say a few words on BP's role in Palestine, if you'd like.
And also we have another interviewee as well from Global Justice Now, so let's go over there and ask their opinion on why they're here today. Hello, I'm with the live stream, and I wanted to ask you, what is your motivation for being here today, and why do you think that global climate justice is so important to you?
Right. Yes, I'm here as a member of Global Justice Now, who are part of the coalition. We campaign on behalf of people in the global south, and they are the people who are at the sharp end of climate change. They are being affected. All islands are going to be inundated before we do. I say I've been a member of the group since 1973. We knew about this. We knew something was wrong in the 1970s. Nobody paid any attention to us. We were all just cranks as far as was concerned. But in my time in the city, I've campaigned to save the whale, and we did at least win that one. We did actually stop absolute industrial killing of whales, and the numbers have come back. So it gives me a little bit of hope. But no, it became very clear that climate change is a catastrophe that's coming for all of us, basically. People aren't paying much attention, and we're now in a very dangerous situation where we've got Trump coming to, who will pull out of everything and tear up everything and drill everything that he can do. But at some point, I think the emergencies are just going to become so extreme that people are going to have to do it. And it will be very painful. I mean, people can't afford to do a lot of lifestyle changes. They can't afford heat pumps, really, at the moment. They're very expensive. They can't probably afford, electric cars as fast as they're doing. So, when we finally get a little bit of extra money, we're going to have to help people to transition.
I love what you said, that we've known about this crisis for many decades now. You got involved in this work in the 1970s, and it really goes to show that our leaders, after decades of knowing about this, and fossil fuel companies have known since the 1960s, if not earlier, that this is a crisis, that the climate change is happening due to our release of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And campaigners like this have been doing this work for many decades, and I think we owe it to the younger generation to take these changes. We also owe it, I think, to people who've been doing this work for so many decades. They need a win, right?
Well, we had 30 years, and we had three lots of Margaret Thatcher, and we got nothing out of the thing. I mean, the aid budget got stripped back. She wasn't listening to things. The industry just ripped, and we just had to stay put and just live it out, you know. And eventually things got a little bit better now. I think under Blair, you know, there was a bit of give and a bit of understanding of things. But I mean, it's only taken the world to get to the state it is climate-wise for people to start really saying, oh wow, this might actually affect us, you know.
Yeah, and that's a big part of the messaging here today is even if we aren't seeing as big of effects here in the UK, people are already suffering and already dying from the climate crisis, especially frontline groups, indigenous groups are already feeling the worst effects of this crisis. And so we can't wait for the worst effects of the climate emergency to come to our doorstep. We already know this is happening, people are suffering, and we must stand up for them. So thank you very much for sharing your perspective.
Thank you very much. Glad you're here. Yeah.
This is getting exciting as we're preparing to march. I see people here from Quakers for Climate Justice, from Friends of the Earth.
That wouldn't have been in the stop. And you don't undertake anyway, you know.
How are you?
Good. I'm on the live stream right now. Would you like to say a few words about why you're here today?
Okay, that's kind of got me by surprise. Oh no, we're here for quite a few things, like a Global Mothers Rebellion, but also to represent the Cut campaign, because just to raise awareness about how in Malaysia and Indonesia there's a lot of illegal logging that's happening, and we've got a little sun bear here. So sun bears actually live in their native habitat is in the primary rainforest in Malaysia and Indonesia, and in particular we're standing with the indigenous communities in Sarawak who are really facing a lot of hardships with the governments who are taking over their land, or they're letting logging companies come and cut down the rainforest. And as you know, we need to preserve our rainforests. So our carbon sinks. Loads of animals and insects and different plants live there. So that's something that we really need to hold on to. And we're also here for Palestine and Sudan and DRC and all those places in conflict. So it's quite a big one mega march for so many different causes. So I'm hoping that there's going to be a really good turnout today, and looking forward to it. Slightly tired, but I think, you know, when the crowd starts going, I think I will feel more energized.
I love the fact that you're here not representing just one thing, but really seeing how all these issues are connected with indigenous frontline communities, with people experiencing conflict all over the world right now. I mean, even at this moment, there's so many people suffering in so many regions. Palestine, for example, also Sudan, Congo, so many other regions. And yeah, it just shows how one person can stand for so many issues, because they're all connected. And we really need to draw attention to that, and that's what's so beautiful about this over 60 organization coalition. It's really amazing.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you so much for being here today.
It's okay.
He has a little like watermelon sock.
Oh, that's really cute. I love the creativity of all of these.
I know. Great. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Hi, sorry. I see a placard now that says system change, not climate change. And I think that's really what we're calling for, isn't it? That we need system change across so many sectors, not just with climate, but also our funding of weapons, of war across the world. And here's a placard which is also drawing attention to the conflict in Ukraine as well. And it just goes to show there are so many regions that are under attack right now, that are experiencing conflict, and so many humanitarian crises that are happening, and it's all kind of connected.
I can ask that.
Have to remember the flooding of the dam, things like this that happened in Ukraine.
Would you like to speak a little bit about why you're here today and why climate justice is such an important issue?
Such a big topic.
It is.
Yes, no, what can I say? I mean, it's just unbelievable what is happening with elections, considering that leaders are elected or leaders are in charge of major countries who are against climate change. So what can one say?
And right now, with the world leaders meeting at COP, being held in another petro-state, it really goes to show that we can't just leave it up to world leaders. We have to put the pressure on them to do the right thing, because they won't just do it themselves.
No, that's right. And then what is this meeting that's happening at the moment? Most of them are praising the natural resources, or oil and so on, and fixing deals amongst themselves. Yeah. So.
And there was a recent article by Greta Thunberg on just how COP has become a greenwashing strategy, really, for governments, for fossil fuel companies, which are not just there, but they're also invited a seat at the table, rather than frontline communities, which should be at the forefront of these conversations.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, every individual needs to do something. Needs to be responsible, and hopefully, then the movements can grow and eventually get somewhere. Yeah.
I love what you said about the growth of movements, and I think that's what coalitioning is all about, is seeing how all these issues are connected, how we can bind to increase our people power together. Thank you so much. So what are your thoughts and feelings as we prepare for the march? Are you excited?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty excited. There seems to be a lot of different groups here, as you've probably seen. Like, there's anti-war groups, there's climate groups, there's Palestine groups. It's just a really nice spread. And you got faith groups as well. I've seen some scientists as well, some climate scientists in the lab coats. Just a big spread of people who just all of which acknowledge that both of these issues are important, and they're intersectional, and both are willing to be out here. Because I think a lot of times people try to divide us. They try and say this issue is not connected, or movements can be really divided. But now more than ever, we need a united front and to acknowledge intersectionalities of our struggles. Yeah, how about you? How have you been feeling about it?
Yeah, I would say that with the demands, the demands of the coalition, it really goes to show that we have to put a combined pressure from all of our movements on the leaders who are at COP right now, because if we leave it just up to them, they're not going to do the right thing. The COP is being held in another petro-state. It's fossil fuel executives are at the table leading these discussions, and we really have to put a combined pressure on all of them and say no to war, no to funding arms and sending weapons across the world, and yes to funding climate change and being responsible for climate finance as an early industrialized nation.
Yeah, I think the timing of this is perfect because, as you said, it's in another petro-state, the new COP. In fact, Azerbaijan is supplying oil to Israel, but they're using there's evidence that they're using that oil to refine into jet fighter fuel, basically, to be used in the conflict and the genocide happening over there. And a pipeline that's feeding it from Azerbaijan to Israel is operated by BP, British Petroleum, just the intersection there, you can't ignore that use. And I think I heard over 1,700 fossil fuel corporation representatives are at COP at the moment, which actually I think it's that's more delegates than are from something like the bottom, the 30 most vulnerable climate states. how is that like acceptable?
Yeah, and that's a huge thing. Is frontline communities should be leading the conversation. People who are most affected, people in the global south, should be leading these climate conversations, not fossil fuel executives who have their own interests at heart. And I also like what you said about the intersectionality between war and fossil fuels. For instance, Barclays and a lot of these institutions which bankroll the fossil fuel industry are also bankrolling weapons and arms throughout the world. And it just really goes to show there's profit in fossil fuels, there's profit in war, and it's really been profit over people when it really should be the opposite. It should be life on Earth over profit.
Yeah, if you're willing to like put money into fossil fuels to destroy the planet and destroy vulnerable nations, of course you're also going to be willing to put money into arms, right? I think we have another interview here. So hi there. Can you let us know who you are and why you're here?
Okay, I'm Linda. I'm a Quaker from Wandsworth Quaker Meeting, and I'm here because I love the planet. I love the variety of peoples and places and creatures and plants we have, and they're all on the way out. It's all unwinding, and we keep saying, well, we've several times had last-ditch efforts. It's still worth making an effort, but I can see that the whole of creation as we've known it is unfurling. I mean, we can see it in the various climate climate-related disasters we've had. Here in Britain, we've been incredibly lucky so far. But we do know that there are places, in Wales, there's the East Anglia and the Wash that are about to be go underwater in the next few decades. I don't know how long it's going to be before the Thames floods London, and we've had wildfires up in forests and so forth already. But it's much worse in other parts of the world, and part of that's our responsibility. So I'm really pleased that I'm not an expert on finance, but I know that I'm really pleased that we're talking about finance now at COP29, actually, I think unless the financial institutions and business also really understands what's going on and responds properly to the science, I mean they are on the road to destruction too. So it's very clear that the groups like Triodos, for example, who've been taking these issues seriously for a long time, are doing much better than others because we understand it. We put our faith in science, but we don't do what they do it. So it's really difficult. And I think actually we need to rethink our values. It's actually not money. It's not having more all the time. But actually, what really matters to us on your deathbed, and we are looking at the decline, potential death of humanity, death and others. What is it we'll regret? And it's not. I don't think there's many people that really want more profit in their bank because you can't take that with you. But kindness, beauty, we all feel better with trees and plants and bird song and all the rest of it. So looking at those plants in the pavement as weeds is less helpful than looking at them as sources of life. And destroying the planet by digging stuff out and burning it is really not helpful. It's a real problem though, because at the same time the people in places like Kuwait and Texas, where the oil comes from, is they are now in a situation where it's so hot that without the air conditioning, life is already not sustainable for them. So they need to be helped to transition in other ways as well. Let alone the people in the poorer parts of the world that have been exploited and damaged. But I'm just holding the people in Azerbaijan in the light, the light of the Spirit, the light of God. I hope they can remember the connections with their part of the world and the people that they love, and work to try and care for them in the future. That's all I can say.
When we talk about like a just transition, or just like when we deal with climate change, it must be just. I think you touched on both things there. Where we need to think about those countries that are going to be affected first, the poor countries who didn't cause this, who didn't do any of the emissions, that's unfair. That's not justice.
Absolutely.
But also for people in like England and people in England, for example, who can't afford their energy bills, or people in Texas who have been forced to become reliant on fossil fuels, they also need justice and they need to be looked after. But there's the people who are profiting off this and the people who aren't profiting off it, and it needs to be justice for all of those groups, right?
I mean, in the States, it's quite interesting. I mean, in Florida, Florida is apparently sinking as well as the oceans rising. And of course, it's the poorer populations, the black populations are in those parts of the world, Florida, which, so there's already a movement of refugees there. And all the sort of refugee connections are huge. I mean, it's bad enough at the moment with people being forced to flee from the land that they're connected to, and their own ways of means of subsistence. But yeah, it's only going to get worse. So we have to practice. We need to practice compassion and dealing with challenges in a collaborative way, a cooperative way, rather than a conflictual, violent way, because it doesn't bear thinking about, really. I mean, we can see what's happening in Palestine and Gaza, where their means of subsistence has gone. We don't talk enough about that. Obviously, the human cost immediately is terrible, but who can live there now? In any case.
Yeah, no, I think I read 76% or so of the land in Gaza is now uninhabitable. They've destroyed the agriculture, they've destroyed the land, they've poisoned the water. I think 97% of the water in Gaza is undrinkable. They've actually destroyed that land, they are dispossessing the people of it. And it's interesting you mentioned like Florida and like the people who are affected by the extreme weather events. It's a very similar thing. They're being dispossessed of their land, but in a kind of indirect way, caused again by people in power, pursuing more power, pursuing more profit at the cost of these people,
And here in London, I just had a message from my brother-in-law who lives on a canal boat, and apparently they were just photographing effluent in one of the canals up in London, which explains which is raw sewage. There've been hundreds and hundreds of swans and geese dying in the canal just in the last few days, and they've discovered this is botulism, and there's no cure for it. So the canal waters here are being poisoned. The trouble is we don't take notice until it's too late, and by which time if you prevention is better than cure, and we haven't got a cure, so prevention, I think that's true for all these climate issues. Prevention is better than cure. I better go and join my people now. Okay. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much for talking to us. Have a good day. So it looks like the march is starting to gain momentum. We have some speeches going on before the march, and
it is a crime against US imperialism and Zionism. Over the past year, we have all witnessed one of the worst genocides in human history. Israel's military jets and vehicles have been live-streamed razing to the ground all infrastructure that makes life possible in Gaza, from schools to hospitals and even the desecration of cemeteries. Israel's mass murder of over 150,000 Palestinians would be impossible if it was not for the fuel supplied by energy companies. BP, British Petroleum, a colonial climate criminal headquartered in Britain, operates and owns the majority of an oil field in Azerbaijan that provides Israel with 30% of its oil via the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline. BP, shame! BP, responsible for orchestrating coups in Iran, in Azerbaijan, oil spills in Mexico, ethnic cleansing of Armenians, gas flares in Iraq, and now, alongside the state oil company of Azerbaijan Republic, responsible for fueling the Zionist genocidal onslaught on Palestine, on Lebanon, and the wider region. Shame! This is the legacy of British imperialism. This is what US imperialism continues to reproduce. We must name the systems that keep the boots on our neck. Today, we are standing outside the British Museum, a key propaganda arm for BP. Whilst BP invests £50 million into the British Museum, the museum cloaks its political, corrupt lobbying as investments in the arts. The British Museum, built to showcase the bounties of British colonial looting, built using wealth drained from the colonies, to this day is complicit in colonial genocide through its £50 million partnership with BP. Shame! Shame! For months, we have disrupted operations for the British Museum alongside workers, parents, children, because we believe that fossil fuel companies have no place in our arts. Whilst over 300 cultural landmarks are demolished by Zionist forces in Gaza, there can be no business as usual when cultural development in Britain is sponsored by ethnic cleansing and genocide, carried out with the blessing of British energy companies. Shame! Shame! We mark our march today as one of many actions around the world targeting BP and SOCAR offices as part of the Stop Fueling Genocide campaign. We have comrades in Turkey, Switzerland, Spain, Jordan, Washington, New York, and more. We demand during the fast that is COP29, held in a very country that is responsible for 30% of Israel's total oil imports, that Turkey, Azerbaijan, SOCAR, and BP stop supplying oil to the Zionist entity. We know that we cannot rely on the moral conscience of states, of energy companies to act, which is why we must keep organizing and keep disrupting these supply chains together. I'm going to leave you with a final note. The words Palestine is climate justice is repeated in our movement a lot. We must know today that these are not just words. When we say this, we know that this is a lifelong material commitment. It necessitates the absolute transformation of the way we all live in the imperial core. So let your commitment to Palestine and the fight for a better world give you your reason to live, to struggle, to revolt. Repeat after me. From the belly of the beast. From the belly of the beast. Hands off the Middle East. Hands off the Middle East. From the belly of the beast. From the belly of the beast. Hands off the Middle East. Hands off the Middle East. No more lies, we want action. No more lies, we want action. Arms embargo, energy sanctions. Arms embargo, energy sanctions. No more lies, we want action. No more lies, we want action. Arms embargo, energy sanctions. Arms embargo, energy sanctions. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Free, free, free Palestine. Free, free, free Palestine.
Thank you. Thanks so much to Layla there, and incredibly powerful words. And just one more time for Layla, incredible words. And we all need to take to heart that when we say climate activists for a free Palestine, when we say the climate justice movement is coming out for Palestine, it isn't just a one-time thing, and these aren't just empty words. We've come out here today, but this isn't the end. This is just a start. We are building our movement of movements together. We must combine together our different justice struggles against our oppressive systems. And this is just a very, very beginning of us continuing to organize, mobilize, and build power together. So, really excited to introduce our next speaker now, Avery from Youth Demand.
Thank you so much. It is absolutely incredible to be here today, to see so many faces in the street. We filled this street up, to have all of these groups joining forces together and to really feel the energy. I'm really grateful to be here today speaking on behalf of Youth Demand. I want to take a moment first to remember exactly why we're here today. We're here because over 43,000 people have been murdered in Gaza. And the predicted death toll is actually over 186,000 people. We're here today because we've blown past the 1.5 degree global temperature limit that we've been told we cannot pass for years. We're here because 90% of Gazans have been displaced, have had to leave their homes. We're here because we are on track to 1 billion climate refugees by 2030. We're here because the number of children killed in Gaza in 4 months earlier this year is higher than in 4 recent years of worldwide conflict. We've all heard the stories of babies being blown to pieces, of children having to go through amputations without anesthetic. It's horrifying. We're here because we are seeing unprecedented climate disasters happen week after week after week. Over 200 people were just killed in Valencia in the floods just earlier this month. We're here because we are all witnesses to both climate collapse and genocide of the Palestinian people. And this climate crisis and this genocide in Gaza are ultimately created and propped up by the same fucked, murderous system. We're trapped. We're currently trapped in this system that deliberately and relentlessly values money over human life. Because murder means profit, and profit is all that matters. As young people, our generation has been placed on death row by this system, but we reject this deal. We refuse to condemn not only our generation, but all future generations to this same murderous system and the destruction it leaves behind. We all have the choice in this moment right now to be part of the change that's required. But when this is what we're up against, we need to be doing more. A to B marches are important, but I think we all fundamentally understand that the monumental change that we need to create desperately doesn't happen just by going on a march and then going home. We've been marching for climate for decades, and we've been marching for Palestine more than weekly for over a year. We need to really take to the streets. We need to engage in mass civil resistance. Because we know that the ultimate goal of this is not and cannot be incremental change. We can't stop at just an arms embargo. We can't stop at just the revoking of the Rosebank license, or at a ceasefire, or at an end to oil and gas. The ultimate goal that we need to be striving towards is to replace this system with one that doesn't just profit, doesn't just serve an elite few, but all of us. All of us. One that places human life and the quality of that life above profit. So, to create a system that serves all of us, that requires all of us on the streets, and not just marching, but disrupting and shutting it down. It requires mass civil resistance so that we can't be ignored, so that we can stand in the way of genocide and build a truly democratic revolution. As young people today, we had no choice in when we were born. I don't think many of us would have chosen to be alive at a time of unprecedented global upheaval. But what we do have a choice in is what we do about it. And we can create change. We can do what we're doing now. We can stand shoulder to shoulder and refuse to move. When we all make that choice, we create the system-wide overhaul that's needed to stop the genocide in Gaza, to stop the global climate genocide, and to stop my entire generation from being sentenced to death. It's our future, so we'll take it from here. So join us as we march today, and join us. You can take action, you can come to a talk, you can volunteer with Youth Demand as we engage in non-violent civil resistance to demand a two-way arms embargo on Israel and to revoke the Tory oil and gas licenses. We need to stand up now and make this change today. Free, free Palestine! Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Tavery. And really important point made around so great that we all come out together and we mobilise in the streets. But it's equally, if not more important, what we do in between these mobilisations. How are we organising in our communities? How are we building power? And how are we going to coordinate and strategise to get the system change that we need? We're going to have one more speaker before we set off on our march. And I'm really happy to introduce Yakil from the Congolese Action Youth Platform.
Hi everyone, so my name is Yakil. I'm from the Congo and I represent the Congolese Action Youth Platform. We are based here in the UK and also in the Congo. As you know, there's been a war happening in the eastern part of DRC, and the war is because of the natural resources that the country has. I'm originally from the Congo. I've lived here for a good while, so my friend Jackson probably has gone. However, it is important that to recognize that with capitalism, in a way, it has an effect of the people working, the miners or the children working there in the Congo and losing a lot of what it is, the cobalt or even the coltan happening there in DRC. And I believe that it is important with the green revolution. Now we have more and more electric cars happening. We have to realize that there are some children working for that, and we also need to make sure that it is equal for everyone and that we can all be on the same space or place rather than just them being exploited. So I will also invite you to be with us, with the Congolese people, to take part into recognizing what's happening there for the past 30 years and making sure that all as a nation, as a mankind, we all go forward. So on that note, I thank you for giving me this platform to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yakil. And such an important point that we cannot forget, that when we are fighting for our transition, we're fighting to end fossil fuels. The reason we say just, the reason we say equitable and fair, because if we don't fight for a just transition, then they will just try and keep business as usual, replace our fossil fuel with extracting lithium, cobalt, coltan from areas like the Democratic Republic of Congo, not caring about the exploitation of labor, turning that land into a sacrifice zone just so we can uphold our normal standard of life here. That isn't a just transition, and that isn't climate justice. So, we are about to set off on our march now. You'll all be turning around as we walk past the British Museum, as we know, sponsored by BP. We go past SOCAR, the second biggest shareholder in the BTC pipeline, funding all the oil for Israel's war machine, and down to Downing Street to hold the UK government accountable. So thank you for coming out, and let's march for global climate justice.
So as we've just heard, the march is about to begin, and we've heard some really incredible speeches. I was very moved by them, talking about how what really struck with me is we need a just transition. It's not just a green transition that builds on this capitalist and exploitative system. We need to replace it with a more just transition, a just green transition, so that we're not just building on the suffering of more people.
Yeah, that's a good idea, yes.
It's good to get the British Museum. Oh, budget, that we're in the back.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
They were meant to be but even then they were not. They probably dropped the bait.
So the march is slowly beginning, and we're going from the British Museum to SOCAR to Downing Street, because each of these places plays a role in this climate emergency and the humanitarian crisis that we're seeing in the world today. And it's really lovely to see such an intergenerational group of people, as well as people from across the environmental and humanitarian sectors. I see a lot of children here today with their parents. And it really goes to show that there are so many generations that are affected by all of these crises. I think we all feel, this is a heart issue. This is talking about life on Earth. And for me personally, it's a quite emotional day because we're dealing with intense climate grief, intense grief for the people of Gaza and other people who are experiencing conflicts right now. And so I think the best response to despair is action. That's the only cure for it. So if you're feeling sad like I am, if you're feeling angry at the state of the world, join us on the streets, watch the live stream, share with your friends, have these conversations in your community, join whatever local organization speaks to you on this, and just get involved, because the only way to cure our despair and our grief is to take action. I also am seeing posters about Trump being a climate disaster. Quite a lot of people in the UK as well are just reeling from the news of the US election and what that means to climate. And it goes to reiterate that we can't depend on leaders like Trump and like these other leaders who are going to be present at COP to solve this for us. This banner behind me says solidarity with refugees. And what we're seeing with the climate crisis is inevitably there will be people forced to migrate, forced to leave their homes, forced to leave their loved ones and their land. And this is really a humanitarian disaster. As the climate crisis worsens, people will be forced to flee. And this series of banners here says stop arming Israel.
So we have a banner here that says stop arming Israel. And it's worth noting that the UK government has provided £500 million in basically arms funding to Israel since I think it was 2015 or so. So that's a shocking amount of number. And also, when we talk about like financing war and militarism, it's also worth noting that in 2022, basically the worldwide amount of money being spent on militarism and arms reached $2.2 trillion. That is 42 times the amount of the UN humanitarian appeal money. 42 times over. They could have used that money to respond to humanitarian appeals, and instead they used it on military spending. So that's why a lot of groups are here and pointing out that disparity between militarism and the amount of money that goes into militarism and the small amount of money that is going towards solving the climate crisis in a just and equitable way. And in this particular march as well, we're looking at the UK government and the amount of money that it is funneling into militarism, and specifically the amount of money that is given to Israel to help arm them. So like I said, 500 million, I don't remember if that's dollars or pounds. Either way, that's a big sum to Israel since 2015. And you might think, 2015, so that's not like the current conflict in Gaza. No, the the aggression that Israel has been showing in that region and towards Palestinians and dispossessing their land has been going on for about 75 years, since the first Nakba, which is when they first began to dispossess the Palestinian people. So 500 million since 2015 is definitely contributing to the militarism zone, the continued dispossession and attacks upon Palestine. And yeah, that's why everyone's here. We've got a banner here, ceasefire now. That's from Greenpeace. Greenpeace are here with us. I see Queers for Palestine are here as well. That's a group that really understands the intersectionality of struggles of minority people all over the world. If no one is free, like none of us are free until we are all free, is one of the phrases that they use. And maybe we'll be able to talk to them actually a bit later. Do you want to ask maybe if...
Are you asking about interviews or just be the background?
So yeah, we might get some more interviews hopefully from a few people on this march. But we are marching from, so if you're just joining us, we just left the outside of the British Museum. The reason we were there is because BP actually sponsors the British Museum to a tune of, I think they said 50 million in donations to that museum. And that is shocking because basically the museum is giving them social license to say that this is a good company to take money from. They're letting BP advertise itself basically on the museum front. And we are saying that they should not accept that money, especially for a museum that is filled with artifacts and things from the colonial period of England as well. What else do we have here? That's the Stop Burning Trees Coalition, I think. Interesting fact, actually. So when we talk about, a just climate transition, because some people think that like planting more trees, driving a electric car is like part of the green transition, but that's just a green transition and not a just one. So, for example, there's evidence that in Palestine, in occupied land, Israel has been planting trees. You can buy basically for them to plant a tree in Israel, which is actually in certain regions that are occupied settled land. And it's touted as this green thing, as this great climate thing to do, but at the expense of dispossessing Palestinian people of their land in order to do this green thing. And there's also been evidence of renewable energies like solar and wind energy being basically situated on illegal settlements in Palestinian and Syrian land by the state of Israel. Which is just, if you want to think about like the stark difference between a green transition and a just green transition, that's one of the greatest examples, I think. But I think, anyone just joining us, we are on the Global Climate Justice March. We just left the British Museum, which is sponsored by BP, and we're on our way to SOCAR HQ now. There's over 60 groups here, representative of climate, social justice, and every kind of justice organization. And they're all here to demand that we cease our reliance on fossil fuels, as well as stop arming Israel in the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Every group here, over these 60 groups. Yep. Oh no, we have an interview now, so we'll pass over.
Hi. Want to move away from the drums, or would it be okay?
I guess, are we all good in audio? Hopefully. So the drums are quite loud behind us, so sorry for you, those of you in the audience, if you can't hear very well. But I'm here with another person, and I wanted to ask, what is your motivation for being here today, and why is climate justice so important to you?
I guess it starts with my children, but then when you come to something like this, and you see all the different groups involved, you realise it affects all of us. But yeah, it's quite emotional being here because the groups are joining together. You know, usually it's just, when I've been on marches before, it's just been XR or Palestine March or another justice group. But here we have loads and loads of different justice groups. I've been taking photos of all the different justice groups around, which is really positive to see. And I think it's what we need at the moment with so much terrible things going on around the world, to see the groups join together and form a powerful organisation.
I love what you said about the power of coalition building, because I always think we're so much more powerful when we're all combined than when we're alone. And so for those of you who feel alone in the audience, who feel like the world is so messed up at the moment, just come to an action like this, feel the energy of and the love of life here, because it's people are coming here for their children, they're coming and showing up for not only their own communities, but people they've never even met. Because we're really fighting to protect life on Earth, and that has to do with protection from conflict, as well as safeguarding for the climate emergency, isn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, also we just empowers us coming here. I went to a climate march 2 weeks ago, and I was sitting in the train feeling quite low and thinking, oh my God, how are we going to deal with this? And you come to a group here and you see lots of people who all care passionately, and you go away with some energy, and you need that energy at the moment. We need all the energy we can get, so it's great to come here and get a recharge, and I hope people watching get a recharge to see so many people here on the streets. Lots of people care, despite what the press tell us. Lots of people do care and do want a better future.
I love what you said about sort of this connection with our mental health and our well-being as well, that it can feel so isolating caring so much about these issues, but when you're in a space with so many people who care just as much, it's really powerful. So join us next time.
Yeah, totally. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So yeah, as you can hear, there's the amazing drums behind us, and it's just a really, really lovely energy here today. Just people on the streets together from all different backgrounds, different reasons for showing up here today. But really what we're asking for is the same thing: protect life on Earth, safeguard life, human life, and the life of other species with which we share this planet. So it's really cool to be here right now. Here we have a placard saying the UK must pay up for causing climate breakdown. That's one of the key demands of this march, is that the UK government ends our reliance on fossil fuels, that it pays up for climate finance, and that it ends its complicity in Israel's genocide in Gaza.
Climate justice! Now! Climate justice! Now! Climate justice! Now! Climate justice! Now!
Now! Climate justice! Now!
Climate justice! Climate justice! Now! Climate justice! Now!
future. Our planet. Our planet.
Our future.
Our future. Our planet.
Our future. Our future. Our future. Our planet. Our planet. Our future.
Our future. Our planet. Our planet. Our futures. Our futures. Our planet. Our planet. Our futures. Our futures. Our planet. Our planet. Justice! Justice! Palestine! Palestine! As you can hopefully feel through this live stream, the energy is just really beautiful today. I'm seeing a lot of placards that say things like love is action, and I really believe that what better way to show your love for someone, for humanity, for the species of this planet, than to take action for them. And it's really lovely seeing people from, as we've said repeatedly, so many spaces, from the environmental space, mothers who are standing for their children, and so many other groups who are all in coalition together to make these three demands together, because we see all of these issues as interconnected. We have to treat life with the respect that it deserves. What are your thoughts as we're marching here? How would you describe the energy in this space?
Electric, which is a bit gauche. No, but it's really good because you always get a sense in these spaces of the communities and like the shared community that we have in this space between different issues, like people like the one behind us, solidarity with climate refugees. That obviously spans over so many different like social issues, and we find like so many of the most vulnerable nations, the ones who are going to become the climate refugees, are the same nations who did not contribute at all to the emissions. There was an interesting stat I found the other day that basically Britain, when you adjust for what we did during the colonial period and emissions from our colonial lands, we have the second highest in the world historical CO2 emissions per head. So people often, they love to say things like, well, what about China? What about Russia? What about... When you compare though, per person, compared to our relative size, Britain has a lot to answer for. And when we talk about justice, we cannot ignore that there was reparations to be had, that we made basically all the wealth that we now stand on as a nation was made off of historical emissions and extraction of other lands. And that's obviously very intersectional with the issues of refugees and with Palestine as well, lands being exploited by more powerful entities. And yeah, it's hard not to see those intersections, and it's just great to see so many groups here sharing it and talking about it.
And I would also add to that we can't talk about colonization and colonialism as a purely historical moment, because this is continuing today with the continued support of Israel's assault on Gaza and the continued support of fossil fuels and the extraction from different places. I really loved the speech on how the DRC right now is experiencing extraction so that we can have our way of life here in the UK and in other industrialized nations. That's not fair, and what we're talking about right now is a just transition. We're talking about the UK owning up to its responsibility to pay up for climate finance, which Global South activists have repeatedly asked for. So there are so many of these issues that might seem at a distance like they're not connected, but they're really all truly connected at the heart.
Yes, and especially during like COP29, which is happening right now in a state that basically makes its profit off of oil and is supplying Israel with almost 30% of its oil via the BTC pipeline, which is majority operated and owned by BP, a British company. So it's very fitting that this is happening during COP29, and we're talking about reparations and the things that should be decided there that will help an actual just transition. Because like you said with the Congo, it's not just that they're being extracted for their wealth, it's being extracted like the lithium and the cobalt for our green transition, and we can't settle for that. We can't settle for just a green transition. It must be a just green transition, and that's really important.
Emphasis on just.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think we're going to be wrapping up this stream, I think in a bit, and we're going to move on to Instagram.
Yeah, so we're giving our viewers many different options for these live streams, trying out something new and different. So join us on Instagram shortly, and we'll continue going live so you can hear all the beautiful speeches and watch the rest of this march.